There. I just had a little showcase one that I wanted to do here for one of Cow's new ones that he made here. So he made this thing on the left, called it the Zookie. It is essentially a perma-hover build, so it can just hover with those extensions as long as it friggin' wants. It doesn't even go down. With two bazookas, oddly enough, and this thing, despite its utter simplicity, is which actually the internals were a little bit unusual, but despite its general simplicity here, it is surprisingly deadly. So I wanted to actually test it out against his other hover AC here, so the Dumbo. Kind of similar idea, just hovering AC, except that one's more blades and grenades, this one's more, well, bazookas. So, just let's have a quick matchup, see which one ends up taking it. Also show off some of the stuff that started happening with this build. So now I experimented with different ranges as far as, you know, his tendencies and distances and all that. So the thing that he still ends up waiting about half the fight to actually start using his extensions effectively, but there's a couple things that trigger the AI to... Wow, that wasn't even a fight. Triggered the AI to use their extensions. Basically, he's set up for what's known as rain of bullets. It's just basically several chips that he has for just firing downwards. So for one thing, that map wasn't particularly great for it. It wouldn't have worked there. But pretty much he has to be able to get above the other guy. Has to have a decent line of sight on them, so set him up for long range. He needs to have some jumping tendency, but not too much, so I set him about 60% of the way. That seemed to be a little bit of a sweet spot. There we go. So, as you can see, he's actually recovering energy while hovering. So, like, in this case, he ended up working out pretty well. The problem is, the higher their tendency, the better odds they have of just completely ignoring the chip and just switching over to their boosters. But if you set them up to completely not use their boosters, then they won't use the extensions either. So in this case, as long as he's relatively above the other guy, he'll use them. And wow, this is completely not even a fight. So, instead, let's see if he could take on the Tempest from the other day. Because why not? There's a good chance he can, because these double bazookas are absurd. That should be a good map for it. I mean, this thing, I love this build, I gotta say. Like, the fact that it's completely hovering and even recovering while using those things, I don't really know where the tipping point was, but it's just awesome. Oh, well, apparently he doesn't want to even use them this time. Come on, hover, you fool. Alright, we'll try for a more open map then. Because again, it's the AI. You can tell them to do everything. They won't. Actually, I should probably show this off here. So, alright. The base character looks a little bit like this. So, they're pretty much supposed to be defensive, but they decide to go offensive because of the chip. It just completely overrides that. Setting him up for these is what causes them to prioritize using an auxiliary booster, but you know, they'll just be kind of inconsistent and sort of throw it out every now and then otherwise. If you don't give them the chip, they won't really look into the fact that they can just hover permanently. They'll, you know, look at it and think, I can sort of skate around a tiny bit, and that's it. They won't bother to think about it past there. Stop hitting the wrong buttons. And yeah, that's about as far as their thought process goes on that one. So let's, actually no, let's set them up for a long, flat area. That could work. Probably the desert's gonna be the best. He has to be able to get above the other guy and then consistently stay up there. So as long as he stays above the average elevation of the other guy, he'll consider himself staying there, so he'll lock in his boosters and then he'll hover around. And since I'm assuming it's triggered to either, you know, general proximity or height or energy, he'll just keep using them. So unfortunately, he doesn't want to use them when fighting against this guy or while overheating. I'm not really sure why. Oh well. Worth a shot with that guy. So it seems like this potentially works as a setup. In terms of an AI setup, I mean. But I'm not quite so sure about it working for a lot of harder fights because he doesn't want to consistently use it. And you can't tell them to do a sort of passive extension use. There's no chip for that. There's only fire from above, and that's the only one that even mentions auxiliary boosters other than closing in, which again is just another aggressive one. So for these longer maps, he seems to be just throwing it out there a little bit, then he gets close, and he'll end up hovering. Why he has to get close first, I don't know. That's just what he feels like doing. But hell, he'll sort of perma-hover sometimes. I mean, the build works, it's just the AI that's perhaps not smart enough to utilize it. But yeah, fantastic build.